I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's military says they've seen 24 Chinese aircraft operating around the country. The planes were spotted north, east and south of Taiwan on Wednesday. Of the group of planes, 11 flew in the country's ADIZ, or Air Defense Identification Zone, which is not Taiwan's airspace but is used as a security buffer. Taiwan's military says it's monitoring the situation. The planes are part of an uptick in Chinese military activity, which is raising questions about whether this is China's response to Taiwan's presidential elections. Reporter Jaime Ocon spoke about this with Ben Louise, a security analyst in Washington, D.C.
Looking at this latest M&D report of Chinese military activity around Taiwan, is this the reaction that people were expecting from China to the results of Taiwan's elections?
It does not appear that way. All things considered, 11 inside the de facto ADIZ is nothing to scoff at, but compared to other reactionary violations we've seen, this is actually quite small. So if we are waiting for some kind of military-focused reaction to the election, I don't think this is it.
Leading up to last Saturday's presidential elections, Taiwan's military wasn't expecting any sort of big Chinese military reaction. But going forward in the next few months, do you think we'll see something major like we saw when Pelosi visited Taiwan or when President Taiwan met McCarthy in California?
Well, I think it's definitely possible. Given the PLA's kind of lack of activity in the latter half of 2023 leading up to the election, I think they're in a position where they have the maintenance cycle set and the aircraft ready to launch a major operation if they'd like to, a major drill. That being said, obviously weather is a consideration, and there are a number of other factors. Really, what I've seen is the PRC's response to the election has been obviously Nauru switched diplomatic relations after some pressure from China, or rather economic incentive from China. So I think that as we move forward, the military option may open up more, but as of right now, I'm not seeing any signs that they're preparing for that, although that could really change at the drop of a hat.
Now, recently, Taiwan's defense ministry changed the way that it's publishing information about Chinese military activity around its airspace and within the ADIZ. It used to publish flight paths, these arrows that show where the aircraft are flying and the type of aircraft and how many, but now it's only publishing zones. I wanted to get your opinion on what these changes mean in the sense of transparency and showing this information to the public.
Well, it's definitely a major change. Unfortunately, I don't agree with this change. I think that there are elements of the new map that are very strong. I think the fact that it shows the de facto ADIZ, the ADIZ area that Taiwan actually uses to define its security buffer, is a very smart decision. It kind of dissuades, Chinese misinformation about the numbers that we were receiving from the MND about those aircraft being over mainland China, which was never the case, but it was something that China consistently claimed. But I think that not showing flight paths and showing zones, it's too vague. I think it is a mistake not to show kind of what we used to see, which was notional flight paths, but specific enough to kind of really understand what the PLA was doing, what kind of coercive activity Taiwan was dealing with. And the same can be said about specific aircraft types. We're being told there are fighters. We don't know what kind of fighters. Same with drones and other aircraft. I think that this does represent a step back in the MND's information sharing policies that I hope that they correct.
That was Ben Louise, a security analyst in Washington, D.C., speaking to reporter Jaime Ocon. Taiwan has lost its chance to host the 2024 Asian Men's Under-20 Volleyball Championship because of objections from China. The Chinese Taipei Volleyball Association says China filed a protest last year saying it could not participate because of complicated cross-strait relations. The Asian Volleyball Confederation says that the tournament will now be hosted by Indonesia. How will Taiwan's legislature function when it opens its new session in February? No parties will have an absolute majority, and neither of the two main opposition parties have made it clear who they will work with. John Van Trieste has this report.
The 2024 election may be over, but the question of what comes next isn't settled. The The opposition Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party may have lost the presidential race, but if they join forces in the legislature, they could hold a majority. Some in the Kuomintang have floated the idea of a joint speakership, with Kuomintang heavyweight Han Kuo-yu as speaker and the Taiwan People's Party's Huang Guochang as his deputy.
你如果说合作，你加起来有62席，这是很大力量，在立法院非常重要的。你不过半，你跟5席是一样的啊，没有差别啊。从正副院长开始，建立一个合作的模式。
But whether this will happen is uncertain. The two parties tried and failed to form a joint presidential ticket. And there's the fact that the Taiwan People's Party has billed itself as an independent force, here to break Taiwan's two-party system. It could reject a position as a junior partner to the Kuomintang, as it did during the presidential race. Taiwan People's Party leader Ko Wen-je is keeping whatever plans he may have close to his chest.
哇，这实在太有趣了！韩国瑜加黄国昌，这实在是，哇，这个画面很难想象。或许人家有政见发表啊，就是说，哎，你希望怎样？所以不急的，还有2个礼拜，给大家思考一下。
Some political analysts even interpret his remarks to mean he could work with the ruling Democratic Progressive Party instead. With the new legislature starting its session February 1st, there's little time to negotiate. But the Kuomintang is distracted by post-election squabbling and questions over its future leadership. There are calls inside the party for Chair Eric Ju to step down over the party's performance, calls that he's rejecting.
我可以一走了之，毫无眷恋。但是我听到更大的声音，要求我要坚定地留下来，扛下来，不可以一走了之，心痛仇快。
All this leaves is a series of questions. Whether the Kuomintang is entering a power struggle, whether the Kuomintang and TPP can bridge their differences, and who will end up on top in the legislature. Dolin Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
President-elect Legislature has resigned from his party faction. He says the move is to promote national unity.
因为更客观了哈，然后去推动国政，也能够团结党内的同志，领导这个党，所以我自即日起离开新桃联盟。
The new Tide faction is one of the largest in the Democratic Progressive Party, with members making up around 30% of appointments in the current administration. Factions within political parties in Taiwan have slight variations in ideology. Party leaders often dish out government positions across factions to diversify the cabinet. Before the pandemic, millions of tourists visited Taiwan each year, with the travel industry making up 5% of the country's GDP. The pandemic's over, but Taiwan is still trying to attract visitors back. As Rick Lauert reports, it's a challenge made harder by Taiwan's delicate geopolitical position.
Taiwan unveils plans for a new sleeper train, which will take in some of the island's most popular tourist spots. Developed with Japan's national rail company, the sleeper will wind its way down Taiwan's northeast coast. It's part of efforts to attract more Japanese visitors and boost Taiwan's beleaguered tourism industry.
我觉得台湾其实可以慢慢的享受，然后可以停在一些已经遗忘掉的月台。 停在那边出去看月光，这整个台湾的风景跟风啊，跟海的味道，其实是可以透过这样移动式的旅馆，然后去重新看台湾的，欣赏另外一种可能性。
Before the pandemic, millions of visitors came to Taiwan each year, with tourism making up 5% of the country's GDP. Now, the government is struggling to get those numbers back. In 2023, visitors from Japan were just half of pre-pandemic levels.
由于日本人持有护照的比例偏低，观光署将给予护照补贴。对于日本人新办护照来台湾旅游，将渴望获得5000元日币的补贴。
Taiwan has made even less progress in getting back Chinese tourists, once the largest group to visit. For the last 4 years, Beijing has banned most of its citizens from visiting Taiwan, seen as a retaliatory measure against the government in Taipei, which strongly rejects China's claims of sovereignty over the self-ruled nation.
一直不肯开放团客也好，自由行，主管机关已经透过管道跟他们谈到，我们相互的来开放。 但是现在就说对方还没有正面的来回应我们，这是我们比较遗憾。
A positive response is becoming less likely. Beijing has made its displeasure clear that the ruling Democratic Progressive Party here just won a third term in office. For now, Taiwan businesses reliant on tourists from abroad will be looking for new ways, like this train route, to get their industry back on track. Devin Tai and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
South Korea and Japan are discussing the nuclear threat posed by North Korea. Representatives from the two countries met in Seoul amid rising tensions on the Korean peninsula. Nuclear envoys from Japan, South Korea and the US are also set to meet, with North Korea and Russia on the agenda. The talks follow Pyongyang's recent launch of a new hypersonic missile. The United States has launched more strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. The strikes targeted 14 Houthi missiles, which the US says presented a threat to vessels. The new wave of strikes comes a day after the militant group hit a US-owned vessel in the Gulf of Aden in response to Washington relisting the group as global terrorists. It's the fourth time in recent days the US has targeted the militant group, trying to stop Houthi attacks on commercial shipping. No survivors have been found after a factory explosion in Thailand killed at least 20 people. Authorities still don't know the cause of the incident at the fireworks depot north of Bangkok. This isn't the first time Thailand's seen such an accident. Last July, at least 12 people were killed and more than 100 homes destroyed when a fireworks warehouse exploded in the south. Transgender people in Taiwan face discrimination in professional, medical and daily life situations. They're fighting to change the law so they can have their preferred gender on their ID cards and other documents. Tiffany Wong reports.
多一分理解，让跨性别好一点。
Transgender people and advocates are calling for more progress in their struggle for acceptance in Taiwan. They say the biggest battle is changing their gender marker on their identity cards. It's not such an easy change to make. The current law in Taiwan requires people to prove they've had gender-reaffirming surgery and 2 psychiatric evaluations in order to change their gender. And a new report found that 40% of trans people had to just hide their gender identity when looking for a job out of fear of discrimination. But even employee data systems that showed their gender marker could accidentally out them.
其他部门的人跑来我们组，然后就问说，那个 David 到底是男生还是女生啊？但是我的同事他们可能也不太理解什么是跨性别，所以在这中间的沟通又会有更多的误解跟猜测等等。
With a new administration coming in, these advocates hope to solidify protections for trans people in law, helping them live normal lives like they want to live. Joseph Wu and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
AI is front and center in tech giant Samsung's newly unveiled line of smartphones. The Galaxy S24 series boasts a range of AI-powered capabilities, including live translation of foreign language phone calls, an industry first. The South Korean firm is trying to win back the smartphone market from Apple, which recently overtook Samsung as the world's biggest phone maker for the first time in 12 years.
Apple's been really good at just doing things that make people feel like their phone is doing more for them. I think the kind of things we saw today, some of these translation capabilities and what have you, are going to sway things, a certain group of people, back to the Samsung side, because that kind of stuff you can't find on an iPhone.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with this footage of an aerobatics show by India's Air Force. I'm Louise Watt. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
For more news from Taiwan and the world, follow TaiwanPlus on social media.